So we're going to get started, and we're going to start with some introductions. I'm Crystin Cox. I'm the Director of Business Strategy for Xbox Game Studios Publishing.
And I am Peter Wyse, the General Manager of Xbox Game Studios Publishing.
Yeah. So I think we're going to start by asking, the question that might be on all of your minds. What is Xbox Game Studios Publishing?
So, publishing can take so many different sort of flavors and forms. So what we do is make games for Xbox platform, and we work with external developers. So Xbox right now owns something like 25 studios, including 343, who makes Halo, and Turn 10, who makes Forza. We are one of those studios, and our job is to hire external developers to make games for Xbox Game Studios. Examples are Flight Simulator, which is a partnership we have with Asobo, is made out of our team. Ori, both The Blind Forest and Will of the Wisps, was made with Moon out of our studio. The Contraband game, which we've announced with Avalanche Studios out of Sweden, is made through our studio. As Dusk Falls, which shipped this year in July. Tell Me Why, which shipped 3 years ago now, with Don't Nod. All out of our studio. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and a lot of what we focus on is new IP, and Xbox Game Studios Publishing has been around a long time. Somebody told me this stat recently, I actually didn't know this, that other than Flight Simulator, every major Xbox brand started in publishing. It started with a partnership that we had in publishing, and many of them are now made by studios that we fully own, but they all started with publishing. So it is a place where we also do a lot of work with new IPs and developing new things to be part of the Xbox brand.
Yeah, and examples of that are Mojang, who makes Minecraft, started in publishing. Coalition, who makes Gears of War, started in publishing.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about who we are, but most of what we're going to talk about today is what we do and how we do it. So you're seeing this slide here. We sort of talk about why do we exist? We just said that Xbox owns 25 studios. So why do you need publishing? And I talked a little bit about new IP, but also the reason that I think we think about when we think about why do we work with third parties is because there's incredible creative ideas that exist across independent developers, and we want to foster those ideas and help bring them to life and help bring them to become part of the Xbox community.
And if you think about that, there's so much breadth. If you think about what games do we care about, what games do we sign, that let me spend a little bit of time kind of breaking down even how our team is organized, because there's no way that Crystin and I can cover the breadth of what we do without great leadership around us. And so we have 8 different leaders who help us accomplish the games that we make. There's Brian Stone, who has a focus on PC games and Asia Pacific region. So games we announced a partnership with Kojima. That is out of our team and out of that team's focus. We have Amy Small, who oversees a focus that we call Prestige, which really focuses on single-player games, Artur-led, focused. We have Crystin, who not only oversees our business strategy, but has a deep and great live ops knowledge and oversees some games in that space for us. We have Kim Swift, who we brought on to oversee cloud gaming and help us define what the future of cloud gaming will be and what does that even mean. And so more to come in that space. We have Elise Baldwin, who oversees what we call our spotlight focus. So when we think about games built for that include characters from underserved communities or developers that are focused on diversity and inclusion. That is a particular focus of the Spotlight team. Jorg Newman oversees simulation, and Flight Simulator, like I said, falls into that category. And we have Jason Garwood, who oversees games that we're making out of the Nordic area. And then to tie that all together, we have Scott Guest, who oversees our services department. So how do we connect all these developers with our Xbox services? How do we make sure that these games are going to run and have great backends and great security? That all falls onto Scott Guest's team. So we can't do what we do without a lot of great people around us.
And I think as we dive into sort of talking about the focus of what we wanted to share today, that's a good segue because we're talking about a lot of different focus areas. So there are quite a lot of projects that we're working on right now. You have over a dozen games that we are currently working on. And I would say one of the things that we feel very strongly about as a publisher is that every single one of those projects is totally unique. And we approach them in a very bespoke way. So we are product focused in our team, and each one of the games that we're publishing actually has a dedicated product team on our side that just works on that game. And they have a deep partnership with their developer. And each one of those teams looks really different because it really depends on what that developer needs and what that developer is focusing on and what that game needs and what we think is going to help them succeed the most. So every one of our projects actually can have wildly different organizations, wildly different kind of talent that's focused on it. And we really feel strongly that that's the way that we should be approaching our work as a publisher, because I think, as it says on the slide, our mission is to be the best publishing partner. We often say, our mission is not to make the best games. That's not actually what we do. Our partners make the best games. Our developers make the best games. Our job is to be an excellent partner to them. And we really feel that the only way to achieve that is to come at every single project with a focus on asking, what does this project need? What does this developer need? And not attempt to put it through sort of a standardized set of goals or a standardized set of requirements, but to really ask what's going to make this as successful as possible.
But we do think about 4 different lenses when we do that. So as we partner with a team, we ask them about engagement. What is your plan to keep players playing your game? And if it's a live ops game, what's your plan to keep players playing your game for years? If it is a prestige game, what is your plan to pull players through the full game and make them want more and build a community where you will do the next game and people will be hungry for the next game? So engagement is one lens that we use. Innovation, or a thing we call through the door. What's going to make people come check out the game is another thing we think about. Why is someone going to stop playing what they're playing and come play your game? And then if you have the engagement, hopefully they'll stick around. We think about community. Are you building a game? Are you going to build a game that will nurture your players? What kind of space are you going to make for your players to hang out in and communicate? And what are your goals around community? And we think about also inclusion and diversity. And I want to spend a little time on this one because it's a broad topic. It's a topic where there's a lot of passion. And so I want to just make it clear that when we think about diversity, inclusion, equity, not every game is for every audience. So we want our developer partners to come to us with an idea of who their game is for. And if their game is for an underserved community, amazing. Do you have people from that community on your team that are contributing to that vision and that are part of the development team? That's important to us. If you want to make a game that serves that community, do you have a mission to build a diverse team? And then we think about this also on our team. Every role that we open, we want to make sure that we interview a diverse slate of candidates, and we make that a requirement. Is that important to our dev teams? We want to hear about that. So really, when we think about that lens, it's really, what are your goals? And if your goals do touch on those areas, how are you going to serve them? And then that's all about the planning, and we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, I think something that's very important to us is community. You can see it in our purpose up here. And that's pretty intentional because as you're talking about, like, it really is about knowing how to build and grow a community. And that starts by knowing who you're trying to reach. We often say we're trying to be the best publishing partner in the industry, but we're not everybody's best publishing partner. We're not going to be a perfect fit for everybody, and that's okay too. We really want to know like what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to reach for, and for us, having at the core of that an idea of who your community is and how you're going to grow them and how you're going to nurture them is incredibly important. We're talking a lot about sort of high-end strategy and philosophy, which is important and drives so much of what we do when we talk to prospective partners, when we ask ourselves how we think we're doing against all of the projects that we're working on. But there is also, I think, a huge part of publishing is the production side, and how we actually build these games with our partners and what kind of process we use. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more because you are the sort of the publishing process guru. We sort of joke because I think you showed up with 23 different work streams kind of plan with hundreds and hundreds of things to think about at every single stage. It's pretty impressive. But we've also been boiling that down as we work with all of our different projects and trying to ask the important questions when we're at different phases. So,
I mean, you go through this process. So I've been in the games business for 27, 28 years. And you go through this, I go through this constant process of what have I learned, and I want to capture it, especially when I make a mistake or when I learn a hard lesson, okay, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to forget about this before it's too late. And so we ask our teams, and we try to take this on as our job. And so we think about what we as a publishing partner need to help to do to bring a developer's game to market. And some of these things will be obvious, quality control, studio's quality. What's your test plan? And we have an amazing test partner at Microsoft, and they have tools. And we want to get those tools into the games as early as possible. So all of our planning also comes pretty early in the process. So let's get the tools set up for the automatic testing and the machine learning that we have with our test team. And how can we purpose-build test tools for your game? Localization's another one. But let's land on diversity and inclusion. It's not enough to say it's important to you. What are you going to do if you don't have those lived experience people on your team? We ask you to build an advisory council. We have great examples of what that looks like. On the game that we're making out of Avalanche, that is set in a specific region of the world. As we built the fiction around that region of the world, we brought in people with lived experience to help us make an authentic feeling space and narrative. And that team built a rhythm of using those advisors in their writing sessions and in their world building sessions. And you just start, practicing that. It goes down so many levels and I could rattle them all off, but I won't.
I was going to say, no, yeah, see, he's got 20 something work streams, but that whole process all up, I think, has been serving us well because it also, okay, yes, there's all this experience that you have and that there many people on our team have tons of experience shipping all kinds of games. And every time you do it, you learn something. Every time you do it, you go, oh my gosh, you know what? We probably should have had that specific audio thing done one step earlier. That was a real problem on this. Okay, let's go back in and move that up the chain. Or, we actually never finished this thing. There are parts of it where we never actually have this part of certification done until later and it's fine. Yeah. Let's move that back. So it's constantly sort of being iterated on, but it's also flexible enough. We try very hard to say, yes, let's bring some structure to the table. We know, hey, you're going to have to go through concept. You're going to have to go through prototype. You're going to have to go through some kind of pre-production. But I think the value of having it really based on, hey, this is just our learning. These are the things that we've experienced and said, you know what? The best chance for success usually is that this is done here. That can open up a conversation with each one of our developers to say, does that make sense to you or does it not make sense to you? Is there something specifically about your title that means, you know what? Actually, this is wild. I don't know when this would happen, but like, we're not going to do any audio until beta. You know, you're like, okay, that's kind of wild, but let's talk about it because we can actually be pretty flexible, move that stuff around if it really makes sense. Our goal is just what's going to give us the best results. And I think it also, as Peter mentioned, does a great job of getting us to really look at ourselves and ask what actually is important to us. And if we say something like, you know, diversity and equity is important, then it should have, its place in those checkpoints. Like there should be specific things that we're asking teams to do, or we're asking if they've considered at all of those checkpoints. The same thing is coming on right now for us also in sustainability. It's not just, it's not just something we were going to like go out and put like a bunch of information out and say like, hey, it'd be really great if everybody did this sustainability stuff. Like, here's some information. We actually really want that to be a part of our process and to ask that question at every step of what are we doing about this? What actions are we taking?
Another example I think of there is accessibility. So if you want your game to be accessible, it's not enough to say it. You have to put an engineer, a designer, UX on it, and you have to start that early. And what we tell all of our teams is that we will pay for that engineer, we will pay for that designer. Please build it into your resource plan. It is important to us at Xbox, and we are happy to pay for it. But so often it's new, and so it just gets deferred. And we'll have that conversation, and we. Like, okay, we'll put it off, and then we know we're going into a space of we're going to hit the requirements. We're not going to be industry leading. And we want to be industry leading in areas like that.
And then, of course, we get to the areas that are really near and dear to my heart, which are live ops. And that's another place where, especially we work with quite a few developers who come from a long history of AAA and a long history of doing sort of what, like boxed product or sort of consumable media kind of games. And as we work with them, if they want to make something that is going to live for a long time, or that they have ambitions in order to continue to update, being able to step in quite early and start talking about all of the things that we see as being important to care about if you would like to have success in that space. We try really hard, we're trying to be a good partner. We try very, very hard. And a lot of this is like, we don't want to get to the end of the line and then say, oh, you know what? Actually, here's a new set of work that you didn't know about that actually absolutely needs to happen, or we're not going to be able to meet these goals.
One of the big disciplines on our team is business management. And that entire team is focused on how are you planning to run a business with this game? And if you are, that planning needs to start early. And I'll plug Crystin's podcast here, The Art of Live Ops. So Crystin has an amazing breadth of work out there. If you want to just dive in and start to learn, you've talked to some amazing creators in this space. And one of the things I love, the worksheets that you give to our partners, like one of them's on ethical monetization. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'll always talk about ethics, and it's everyone's favorite topic, especially in a mixed setting. I do think it's very important. I've been working with monetization for a long time, and I've had an opportunity to work on a lot of really fantastic games. But the thing that I've seen pretty consistently is that one of the biggest razors that, to me, will determine whether or not you're going to have really long-term success with your monetization is whether or not the developer feels proud of their monetization. And in order to get there, you kind of have to have these conversations quite early on, like, what does ethical monetization mean to you, and what are your ethical standards as a developer? So they said, my goal for all of our partners is that they will be proud of their monetization. And if someone asks them about it, they'll be like, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that work, and I'm proud of what we offer to our players for sale. But to do that, you do have to have pretty difficult sometimes conversation fairly early where you set those guidelines down, because I can say from experience, it's very difficult when you're running a live game and things aren't going perfectly and someone just comes up and says, we're not going to meet our monthly target. Why don't we do X? And if you haven't really thought deeply about what you actually want to do with monetization and what you don't want to do, it can be quite easy to go, yeah, okay, let's try that. That sounds good right now. Suddenly you just brought it up to me. So it is really important to me. We do a workshop with our developers on ethical monetization fairly early. We just ask them to think deeply about what they want and what they would be proud of and how they want to show up in that space. And I think that's been fairly successful. Doing the podcast, which been doing for a number of years now, where I basically just interview game developers about their experience working in live games. Monetization is a topic that comes up over and over and over again. And I think it's because if you want to make a live game and you want to run it for a long time, somehow you have to pay for that development. We don't just get to make them for free. So it's something that's on a lot of developers' minds. And it's something that as a publisher, I think we feel we need to bring really good advice. We need to bring really good guidance, and we need to bring really good partnership around that area.
One of the things that's a passion of us and our team is we want to partner with developers and make careers for them. Like, we want these developers to be in business, hopefully with us, but we want these developers to be in business for years. We want people to grow their careers. Like, we have invested in studios that have started with 2 or 3 people. They are bringing on people, and we want to do that in a way that is sustainable. So another thing we do is measure. And we get together every week and we talk about, like, are we hitting our goals? And did we hit our revenue targets? Did we hit our engagement targets? And what's our community sentiment? Are people happy? Are people upset? What are they upset about? Are we addressing that? Do we have a plan to address that? And that is in partnership. And this is maybe another area to dive into, is the partnership, like publishing and our relationship with our developers, like, extends to marketing and finance and communications. That's what we call PR at Microsoft. And so we are the bridge to all of those other teams. And those other teams are in that meeting with us, measuring that right along with us. And it's this rhythm of business that we've established of sharing the same goals and being on the same page and getting together and talking about it.
Yeah, and I mean, not to be a broken record, but it really does come down to, we want to give our games the best chance to succeed. We want our developers to succeed. We want them to meet their goals. And we just are very aware that that doesn't end with distribution. Distribution is really like one small part of what happens in order to have success today making a game. And especially if you would like to make a game that does attract and then grow a community, we really need to be there with them, helping them at every step, even if it's years down the line. We take it very seriously when we ship a game and it becomes part of the Xbox community. We have games that we shipped 10 years ago that we still maintain their multiplayer servers, and like, if there's a community there and they love that game, like, we want to make sure it's there for them, because players don't care about your business deals, right? Players care about their community and they care about their game being there for them.
I'll dive in a little bit into the rhythm of how we think about communicating what we're making to the wider organization at Xbox. We call those our big moments. And I think I have 7 of them. So the first one is Greenlight, and that's about alignment with your biz dev partners, marketing, finance. Biz dev brings us a game that's exciting to us. We think about all those lenses that we talked about earlier. Okay, let's talk more about this game. Let's actually start to do a green light for it. And then we start to align with our marketing and finance, but we also bring in quality. We also kick off a due diligence process where we're going to dive in deep into all the vectors that drive our process, those work streams that I talked about. We're gonna kick the tires on all of that and get alignment on Greenlight. And then we're going to go to Xbox with a business case that marketing and finance believe in. And if you don't have that alignment, like you really can't get it out of the gate. And then what I ask is that we are given permission to go away and work on the game for a year and a half, sometimes 2 years. And that can get us through our concept gates and our prototype gates before we have to stick our head back up. And if I feel very lucky to be in an organization that gives us that level of like, go do your work and come back when you're ready. I haven't always had that luxury, but here we do. So when we pop our head back up, it is at something we call Product Inform. And at Product Inform, we've built enough prototype to feel comfortable going into pre-production or even production. And we have gotten deeper alignment with our business team on the business that we want to run around the game. They have done all the workshops. They've done all the worksheets. They've built their business case. We have built out a 5-year finance plan that talks about the business of the game. We have gotten deeper alignment with marketing. We have concept tested this game with an audience. And so we start to have results of how people will react to our product one sheet. And we start to test that game with the market. And so we show up and we do our Product Inform. And we also at that point might be asking for more money. Sometimes we structure these deals so that it goes in 1, 2, 3, 4 waves of financing, because the other thing we've learned in making games through the years is that when you greenlight it, it changes. As soon as you greenlight it, it's going to start changing, and the timeline's going to change, and the amount of money you need to make is going to change. So ideally, we don't like to ask for the full boat. We want to find our game as we make it. And so at Product Inform, that's an opportunity to go back and say, I know more about what I'm making now. And here's what I need to get to the next big gate and the next big moment, so the next gate will be pre-production, and then mid-production, I added a gate between the end of pre-production and alpha, because so much happens in that time between the end of pre-production and alpha that we really need a moment to assess. And I also think about mid-production as our last opportunity to scope. And if you don't take stock in the middle of your development and say, how am I really going to finish this? By the time you get to alpha, it's too late. You have to finish everything you've built, and you have to rewire anyway. But at that mid-production gate, we do another big moment, which we call internal announce. I think of internal announce as your practice E3, if there was an E3 anymore, or your big moments to come out and show your game to the public. It's your announce moment, but you're going to practice that internally first. You're going to make sure that your organization is as excited about this as you want your players to be. And so it really puts you to the test of, is this game ready? And it is your final crack at honing your business goals, having a clear vision of how much money you will need to not only finish this game, but run this game post-launch. The other thing we want to accomplish in that gate is getting money for that team to run beyond launch. Because the other hard lesson learned, is that if you're scrambling to get money for your team at your launch date, like it's too late. Like that team has made decisions to move on, is starting to build a new business. And so we really want to lock that business in at mid-production so that the team knows we're committed to them and we have a business to run. So that's our internal announce big moments. That might lead to a big moment that we call our live ops greenlight, and that's where we unlock that money. And then our other big moment is our 1 year out, which is final alignment with marketing, final alignment with comms, a plan to go and talk about the game, take it on the road. Who are your spokespeople? What's your specific comms plan? And that's really a coordination with our marketing team, our marketing communications team that builds all the box art and the logos and the name. And so that 1 year out is our final big moments, and then we launch, and that's our 7th big moment.
Yeah, I always say if you get through internal announce, it basically triggers marketing and Marcom and PR to go, we could probably start making plans to talk about this game. Now we've seen what you think you want to show to players. We can go actually start build all those plans. And that leads you up to the 1 year out, which is really where we do the tight go-to-market planning in order to get the game through, the phase where it becomes widely available, sort of whatever that means for an individual game. So it's nice to have that sort of internal announce where it's a little bit safer. You don't have to just throw it out there in front of players right away. We have a luxury, I think, at Xbox, because it is a large organization with a lot of different perspectives, to be able to show to that group and get a lot of really valuable feedback.
That really sort of covers the gamut of what we do, at a really high level. Again, I could dive into the other 23 work streams, but I think it's more fruitful to open it up. And
yeah, I mean, I wonder if people do have questions. We kind of wanted to do this talk because I think very, very rarely do publishers just come out and say, here's how we actually do publishing. It can be a little bit of a black box sometimes, especially for developers. So if people want to come up and ask questions, we're trying to be a more open book.
We can't hear that.
And say it. Can you hear me okay? No? Yes?
No.
I'll try to shout a little bit more. Oh, great. Perfect.
Of course, as soon as you start shouting.
Say you get some of the way through production, maybe even mid-production, and you as the publisher see something you don't like, or probably more likely you hear from player feedback that's oh, this isn't really working. How do you handle that as the publisher, and how much do you say, hey, you're the game designer, you're the game developer, that's up to you, and how much do you intervene and say, hey, we think it should be like this?
One of the work streams is user research. So we have we want the developer to know that we are going to test this game. We're going to test this game with players, and we're going to have a plan for that. And we're going to have a plan for when you want to put it in front. And our user research team is so great that we can take small ideas, we can take big ideas, we can take playables and get a lot of feedback on that. And so ideally what we're doing is just creating a rhythm where that feedback is not scary and ideally doesn't surprise us. So it's iterative along the way. But big surprises happen. And those are reevaluation times. And so another thing we do is we try to build contingency into our budgets so that we have a little safety fund that will allow us to adjust before I have to hit another big moment and actually go ask for funding. So that is just sort of based on years of experience of give yourself a buffer because stuff will happen. But ideally you're planning for it all along.
And I think I'd add to that too a little bit, in that one of the reasons I think it's so important that we build a product team that is focused on a single title and is focused on a relationship with their developer is because they're working very closely with that developer for many years, and they're working on a feedback pipeline. We're trying to build some muscle around us being able to deliver feedback that isn't directive, right? And for the developer to get a little bit more used to hearing feedback, and feedback that doesn't come with, and this is how you're going to fix it, or this is exactly what you should do, but instead just comes with, hey, we're going to point out some things we see. We're going to point out some things we think we're seeing from, user research scores and players are seeing. And especially if you're going to do a live ops game, it's really good practice because once you get into live user testing, players are absolutely going to come with a lot of feedback on everything that you're doing. Often they will come with very specific ideas about how you should fix it. You don't necessarily want to do those things, but we at least try to build that ramp over time and that relationship and that trust where we can say, even if we have to deliver feedback that is maybe not something you want to hear, it doesn't feel oh, the publisher says we have to do this, or they're coming in with a solution, but instead there is a relationship that exists there.
Yeah, I have kind of two questions. The first one is, what's the earliest stage of development Microsoft will consider being interested, starting to support, etc.? And the second part is, other publishers very often put up forms you can fill out on their web page and send your game. But I actually researched Microsoft Xbox and I couldn't find any point of contact. Like, how do we contact you? What's the best approach?
Right. So Noah Musler, who runs our business development team, nmusler@microsoft.com.
Yes.
And it really is through that forum that like all of our ideas filter, because we really need to have like that one repository to filter those ideas to us. And so we really, and he's great about just, he wants us to get his email out there. He's like, send them to me.
He does tell us we can tell anybody that email address, and I love just put it on a mic.
So back to your first question, like any stage. Like I said, we have started funding development teams with 3 people and a paper idea. We love it when a prototype comes in and we can see the game and feel the game. Like then we know that okay, you know what you're doing. So it just really depends on, like, we'll look at it all. And it runs the gamut.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, hey. In recent few months, a lot of people have started using ChatGPT, and Microsoft is really leveraging this fantastic technology in its office offerings to the enterprise clients. I'm just wondering, at a high level, do Xbox started exploring potential use cases of leveraging large language models? And if so, could you share more, or even, like, if you got a plan, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
I think I think it's going to be an answer that is not particularly deep, but for us, it's really our developers drive that. If they're interested, if our developers are interested in that technology, then we're going to help connect them to that technology. There is, yes, quite a lot of really exciting work happening at Microsoft, and that is an advantage because we have a close relationship that we can develop. But it's really up to our developers. Like, if they have creative ideas that they want to pursue AI, or they want to pursue large models, like large ML models, then we can help facilitate that connection. But it's not something that we're sort of asking people to do. Like, we're not sort of like saying, hey, we specifically have this thing we want to achieve, and so please, our developers, go investigate that, if that makes sense.
I guess the one wrinkle I would add to that is that, like, when you talked about the purpose-built teams, if you think about and I don't know if Kim minds me talking about her team, but if you think about where we're going with cloud gaming, and you can imagine that we would be like, engineering is an important discipline in that team. And so where is cloud gaming going? There's going to be engineers in that team that are going to explore all the technologies that we have at Microsoft.
Hello. First off, thank you so much for the information. It's great information today.
Cool.
I'm AD. I work at SoundCloud. I head the sync department over there. So I know you talked about third-party vendors for your publishing partners and things like that. I know you have different music sources, but how would one, I'm already pitching to like music supervisors over there and things like that, but how would one be a part of that gaming development process, providing some of our sound design artists and things like that? How would that work from that approach?
We really want to rely on, like, that has to be so integrated with development that what we do in our work stream is ask the developer, what is your plan? We have experts on our team who can connect you to other people if you don't have a plan, but you need a plan. And we start that early. That's part of the due diligence that I mentioned, which is and if they don't have a plan, it might be a reason to walk away, or it might be think about that, come back with a better answer. Because audio sometimes is the last thing thought about.
Always.
Yeah.
And there can definitely be times where we can be helpful in connecting people if they don't know. Like, if they're a developer that's just starting out and they're like, I don't know where to go for this. But we really do. But when we do that, it's us directing them to make that connection, because it really has to be so tightly integrated.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the other thing I'll say there too is, like, so many of our leaders are from cross-discipline. Like, a couple of our leaders are audio designers. So, we try to, like, keep a little smattering of everything in our team.
Hello, thank you for the talk. We're one of the teams that are partnered with ID at Xbox for the Accelerator program. Hopefully, one day we potentially be working with Xbox Game Studios as a publisher and as a partner. Just wondering, what is the workflow look like for smaller indie titles? Maybe studios that are just starting out. What does it look like in terms of the pre-production, production for teams and games that don't necessarily have maybe like a large live ops component or just maybe smaller in scale?
I guess a couple different answers to that. One is that's why I love our ID program, because they have such deep knowledge about like the shortcuts and the things that you can think about there. The accelerator program is a path to get to us. We work closely with James Lewis and Chris Charla, so that when your game is out of that prototype phase, it'll go through Noah's team and we'll take a look at it. That's part of it. Anything else to add? Yeah,
and then I would say, we do have teams and projects of a pretty wide variety of sizes. And you're right. We often talk a lot, and especially Amy Small's team, who has a few projects that are a little bit on the smaller side. We'll look at this giant list and all this huge amount of process, and she'll be like, for a lot of those projects, we won't do every bit of that, right? Yeah. It's not going to necessarily make sense if we're talking about a team that's making, like a 6 to 8 hour long single player game that's just got like a really amazing hook or a really amazing style or story. So we try to be flexible there, and really, because we are very aware that we can overwhelm. Like we try not to be the Xbox tax that comes and sort of swarms a team. So when a team is small, we try to scale down a little bit so that it isn't overwhelming. But we also, want to help the team reach their best potential, right? So there could be things like, maybe if you were going it alone, you wouldn't think about doing X, but hey, because we do have these resources available, let's stretch and make something like, additional language support happen, or like fully voiced localization or something like that.
Thank you.
This kind of ties into what the last guy was talking about. But you talked about these intermediate checkpoints and how you're kind of growing it and making sure that you're with the project to grow into its best possible thing. Is there a minimum scope that you would say, like, okay, if it's less than $5 million, that's too small, or if it's less than 20 people, that's too small, or is there a cutoff, roughly?
No. Again, we apply the lenses, like so engagements, innovation, community, and what's the approach to DEI. And I think that there are so many examples of $5 million games that have blown up that we really do want to look at everything. Mm-hmm. And so I would say no. But we think about scale. We do want to build a business and a sustainable business. So no, but we are thinking about the business that we're going to build.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be hard for us to say price was really a great indicator of whether or not a game was going to be a great part of the Xbox community. So I think it would be, we wouldn't want to put that kind of arbitrary sort of under 5 million. We might say if you're a team that's we're 2 people and we never want to get any bigger, I think we'd have serious conversations where you're you realize how big we are, right? Are you okay with all of these things we're going to come and want to talk to you about? But I can definitely imagine teams, and we've had small teams that are yes, I'm absolutely want to do all those things.
But you want to have something that speaks to the hardware. I mean, Xbox is a great piece of hardware, so it has to look amazing, and it has to really speak to 4K and things like that, right? Yeah. Supporting those pillars.
Yeah, and so we think about quality. How's it going to show up is for sure something we think about. I would like to think we wouldn't have turned away Vampire Survivors, though.
Yeah, no, I mean that's why I think it's one of those things where, does that tiny little team want to do all of these things? And do we really believe together, if we sat down together, that we would help them make the best version of the game they can? Because as I said, we want to be the best publishing partner in the industry, but we're not everyone's best publishing partner. Yeah. I'm going to try to suppress my oh my gosh, I would love to have worked on Vampire Survivor, but but yeah, I mean, it has to actually make sense.
Cool. Thank you so much.
All right.
Hello, sorry. I have 2 questions if there is still time, so one for each. So I was thinking for you, Crystin, if, for example, there is a title that needs like, let's say, 3 years, no, to build up the community until the live ops are ready and stuff like that. Is there a rule from Microsoft to be able to recoup the money within the 3 years, or if the title doesn't break even until the 5th year, you guys will say like, no, we need something with it because of accounting and financial rules or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's live ops is something that does take time, and generally most live ops games that have had really great success grow that success over time. They don't really start where you hope. They don't start at their height. You hope they're gonna grow. That's what you want. For us, what matters is growth, right? Are we seeing that positive indicator that yes, we are doing it? We are growing this community. There's interest here. There's something there. The engagement is working. People are enjoying it. And we see ourselves making progress towards those goals that we put for ourselves. That's the most important thing. I'm probably more inclined to this than the normal person on the Tell Me team. Like, I almost don't care if we hit our goal. What I care is that we're doing better today than we were yesterday. Like, I just want to see iteration. I want growth. I think where it can be really challenging is when you don't see the growth, right? Like when you're really just trying to figure it out. And we try to work with our teams to give them the best opportunity to do that level of figuring it out before we have a big public launch, right? Like we try to do more, closed user testing, even maybe like long-term user testing, but still keep it closed and like try to make sure we see those good indicators and we see good data before we sort of throw them out to the wolves and say like, I mean, I hope everything is going to be okay and that like we get it going in the right direction.
And then for you, Peter, I was thinking, so you mentioned user research for the validation. So I was thinking maybe can you explain a bit what it would involve, what type of user research do you guys use to validate if a game that is being pitched to you kind of like makes sense? I mean, how do you validate that?
We don't really use user research for that. Like user research is is the game being pitched to us, does it make sense? That's more of a marketing alignment on like, is there a business case for it? And I'm aware that one of our user researchers is in the crowd. I don't want to answer this wrong. Like user research is a way that we iterate, and that's what we want that relationship to be. We don't want to use user research as a gate to say, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? Like it's a tool for our developer, and it's so important that developer trusts that relationship with our user research team to know that like they're in a safe space where they can fail and iterate and we have like a fun score goal before we launch, but it won't be fun for a long time, and that's okay. And we need to create that safe space for our teams to like have that relationship with user research, because that is so important to the iteration and it's integral to the development of the game. And then there's like consumer testing, and we really rely on our marketing partners, and that's also a relationship with our user research team. But we kind of think of it differently. How did I do? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for what was a very enlightening talk. I have a question around monetization. Could you talk a little bit about that? At what point in the development process do y'all, talk business models? Is that something that you reevaluate? How much input do the developers have into that?
Yeah, so I am a big believer that you want to have a directional idea on your business model basically from the beginning. When people are like, what? I'm always point out, well, you do. You always do. It's sometimes we make the mistake of just sort of defaulting to charging $60 up front. That is a business plan. That is a monetization strategy. So I want us to think about that even right up front. The way we handle it in a more like sort of processy way is that we produce a business plan at every one of our gates in alignment with our developers. So we work on that with them. We want that to be collaboration between there's a business manager who's assigned to each project who can work like a sort of product manager for that game. They work with the developer to make a business plan that at each gate. We know the business plan that shows up at concept is very vague. Like the business plan is like mostly focused on what we don't know instead of what we do know at that stage. But we at least are doing that exercise of putting it down and saying, okay, if we think about this, what do we think the business is going to be for this? Like, do we think that it's a premium upfront cost? Do we think it's a, mid-tier upfront cost with DLC? Like, at least think about that. And then I think for me, crucially, at that phase, the business plan includes, why do we think that? Like, how does that actually relate to the game and the way players are going to engage with it? And then what are we going to do in the next phase to validate that? Right? Because it's a lot more unknowns at that phase. And then we keep iterating on that at each gate. And it's an opportunity for us, as I said, to get with the developer and build that deck. For us, it's a PowerPoint deck, but like build that documentation together that actually says, yeah, this is what we're thinking. This is why we think it'll work. This is the way it's integrated. And also here's the stuff we still don't know. I would say we generally aren't going to like lock down hard on like, this is exactly what it's going to be and like how we're going to present it until we're at like 1 year out and we're really doing go-to-market planning. But so many monetization strategies depend on like deep integration with the gameplay. If you want to do any kind of microtransactions, if you want to do battle passes, or if you want to do cosmetics, you really do have to know that so that the developer, when they're making their design plans, can make sure that they're actually supporting that business case. The example I always give is you don't want to say, we're going to make all of our money off of cosmetics and then build a game where no players don't see each other ever in their cosmetics, right? Like, and you're like, wow, maybe a miss there. That's quite extreme, but maybe not as extreme as it should be. So that's why we do it quite early, even though, as I said, pretty vague to start with.
Thank you. Just a follow up to that. Is there any point in that process where the thought of it being a Game Pass game comes up, or is that a completely different? Process?
Do you want to talk about Game Pass?
I was like, great question. We through our research, we know that a Game Pass player is not really different than a person buying the game at retail or full price. So it is a question we get a lot, but we just know from the behavior of those players that we don't really think of them differently.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, this has been really helpful. Thank you. So you mentioned building a safe space for your developers to fail, and it sounds like you certainly have a really great relationship with your partners. And I'd be curious to hear more about how you think about building that trust and building that great relationship with them, so that it can be really collaborative and not this sense of feeling you get in some cases where it's like the big publisher coming in and telling you what to do. Really fostering that connection and partnership.
I think a big part of this is providing value, and like what can we bring to the developer to like in terms of data, in terms of workshops, in terms of experience that we've had, in terms of an advisory council that we've built before, and then it's just like that process, like going through that process together and taking that time. It's a process of building trust. So you start from green light. Well, it actually starts it starts at places like this, and like building a relationship and say, or hey, that was a game that was interesting. And when we meet that developer, what are you doing next? And like we are always nurturing like relationships that we want to have far into the future. And then you get into that rhythm of those purpose-built teams that we've talked about. Of if we want to work with an R2R-led studio who's like, I've been burned. Mm-hmm. I don't want your input. We stay away. Mm-hmm. And we just say, we're here when you need us. Mm-hmm. Here's things we think you should think about. Oh, okay, you don't want to talk about that right now? We'll be back. And so it's really just, it's this kind of push and pull on engagement. And every relationship is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the key is it takes time and you have to prove it. I think that's trust. And as I said, we try to structure the team such that you have a team you're working with. they're your collaborators. You're building a personal relationship with those people. Like, surprising people aren't showing up and saying, now I suddenly have an opinion about your game. And you have to prove it. You have to actually go through those experiences where, there is failures or struggles, and you are supportive through that. And it can take a lot of time. I think it's worth it. I always say, like, a development team can only make the game they want to make. Like, you can't make them make a game they don't want to make. You can try, but it's hard. You're probably not going to work. So, we just have to go on that journey together, and we do quite an extensive due diligence process, and a lot of it is really not about the game. Like, a lot of it is about the people and the kind of relationship we think we can have with that developer.
I think another part of it too is, like, we have great people on our team. Those people have been in the industry for a long time. They have reputations. We have so much integrity on our team, and I have faith that the people that have worked on our team with developers, that word spreads. And so when we get back to our mission, we want to be the best publishing partner in the industry. It's really based on our reputation, and we are only as good as our integrity, as doing what we say we'll do, as being transparent with how we set up our deals and our gates and our reviews, and being available in communication and collaboration. All those things are really dearly held values for us.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Okay. I think that we're just about out of time. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
I really appreciate you all being here.